raising kids isn't just about raising a productive worker. I want them to know that they're more than that. Like their childhood is not about preparing them to enter the workforce. Yes, that's a part of it, but that may look different for people in very many ways. Just from a very early age, letting them know that they have that control is just a really important thing, and they're not required to fit into whatever society says, like, this is the way you have to be.
Welcome back to the OpenEd podcast. I'm your sometimes host, Ella, and today I have Cassie Tinsmon on. So Cassie has 2 kids. They take kind of an unschooling approach, which we'll get into in a little bit. And she's also the founder of Lily Lake Homeschool Collective, which is a place for kids to play, do social events, take classes. It's located in Kansas. We're very excited to have her on to talk about that, to talk about her approach to unschooling and just like education in general. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to do this.
Okay, so can you explain to me your approach to education, and also how long have you had this approach to education?
I have known since I was a teenager that we were always going to homeschool. I have a sister who has 8 children, has homeschooled them all. My oldest niece is now in her early 30s, so I've been around it for a long time. My daughter is 11 and my son is 4. And so it was just always a thing we knew we would do. My sister was also very unschooly, so I've watched her kids grow up that way. It always just kind of made sense to me from very early on that kids naturally will learn when you give them the opportunity, and just really trying to preserve that internal motivation to learn that kids are born with. We all see it when our kids are infants and toddlers, and on average, most of the time, learn to talk, learn to walk, start automatically hearing sounds and identifying letters and all those things that we don't necessarily sit them down in a class to do. They just pick it up by going about their day and interacting with kids older than them, adults, things like that. The unschooling, self-directed idea is based on that as long as you continue to expose your child to new things and give them opportunities to participate and learn, they will thrive and learn what they need to know.
I love that. And can you explain to me, how do you right now foster their love of learning? So as they get older, as they start to explore different things, how do you continue to make sure that they love learning? Because I think something that I've heard of, and I would love your thoughts here, but is that sometimes it becomes really difficult for families to continue learning and educating their kids, even when nobody's telling you that you need to do it. Like, how do you maintain their love of learning so that they actually are self-directed and become like active participants in their lives?
Yeah. So I think a lot of it, obviously, like, I'm no expert. I have my 2 children. My daughter's 11. We have a long way to go in this process. And, ensuring a successful adult, demonstrating it. My husband and I both enjoy reading, listening to podcasts, like learning new things. Obviously, starting this business, we had no idea what we were doing. We talk about a lot about, living your life, like questioning things and always just being curious. And so I think that's the biggest thing. Like, we of course have battles about, screen time and those, right? Like, we live in this society where attention is continually being pulled in all sorts of directions. And I think that's a struggle. You're fighting against video games and movies and things like that. But it's really just kind of demonstrating that for kids, putting them in groups together. I think that's one of the things we saw during COVID and with my daughter is when she got kindergarten age, all of our friends that we had made as toddlers and things like that ended up going to school. And so a lot of times it was just, and this was kind of the impetus for Lily Lake, is that, it didn't look like I thought homeschooling would look like, that she would be like super curious and want to sit down with me and learn things and go to museums. It just didn't work like that. And so during COVID, there was a lot of like, okay, what does this look like? What is it going to look like in the future? And then I started a co-op a couple of years ago. Really, I just started offering like a free class every other Friday at our local library for homeschool people. And I was like, look, I'll put a lesson plan together and do that. And I watched how her curiosity kind of changed when other kids were around. She engaged a lot more seeing that. And so then that therefore turned into a co-op we ran a couple of days a week in the 22-23 school year. And then eventually has now become Lily Lake. But I think it's a challenge, but it's really just, your kid best, your family the best, and just trusting your instinct. I think there's a lot of parents that are continually looking for expert advice, or somebody to tell them the right approach. And I don't know if anybody knows that right now. We live in a very weird world of a lot of new technologies and lifestyle and things like that. So
It's so true. Well, so your goal was that your kids would love learning. Can you explain any other of your goals? Like, what are your primary goals when it comes to educating your kids, helping them to grow up, helping them to be the kids that you think that they should be?
one of our largest priorities is raising them to be good people and civically engaged. That would be my number one priority, is to be kind and help others is the most important thing. On what came after that, because that's like just such a big thing for me. But the critical thinking is really, I think we live in a world where it's really hard to decipher what's true and like the traditional ways of, a peer reviewed article or being able to look something up in a journal or, on which websites to trust, things like that. Like it's all just been so convoluted in the last 5 years that you really have to dig deep and read things that are saying different views and then figure it out for yourself. You can't just say, I read this in a peer reviewed journal and therefore it's correct, because you can find a journal saying the exact opposite things, and like data can get manipulated to say different things. What we thought 20 years ago isn't actually what's true now. And so just really thinking critically and being able to decipher that, and then being confident in making your own decisions, and living a life that feels right for you. And it may not be about going to college and making a lot of money. It could be, raising your kids. I was kind of a generation of women who it was like no option but to go to college, and like you could do it all and you would have your kids and they would go to daycare because like you were going to have a career. And so like balancing all of that, I think will look a little different for like my daughter's generation, and then my son a little bit behind her.
What skills have you seen that you are giving them? Like, what are the things that you're really proud of that as you've seen them grow, you start seeing little signs of these skills start to develop inside of them?
I mean, I think one of the coolest things with my daughter over the last 6 months since we opened Lily Lake is we also have a toddler play cafe in a separate building. She has learned how to basically run the cafe herself. She can use a commercial espresso machine and make lattes. She knows how to run her point of sale system. She can make every menu item and serve orders. And that's been really cool. So she works the birthday parties with my husband every weekend, which then allowed her to make some money. And we've now opened her a bank account and talking about those sorts of things. So that's been really neat. And we've actually then had one of her other friends was really jealous, and that she comes to the homeschool space. And so she worked a birthday party with her too. So it's kind of a different experience. Like I didn't really think about that when we opened the two businesses side by side, but that's been really cool just to see the kids and how they engage with that side of the business and learning from it.
Can you walk me through like a day in the life? Like I'm guessing some days are not the same at all, but on average, what does a day in the life look like for your daughter?
So now since we opened, we're out here Monday through Fridays. We usually, again, we're not super out of the house and on time kind of people in life right now. But we get out here around 9:30 or 10, which is when our first kind of spark session starts, is what we call it. And we usually have kids here from that 9:30ish time till 2:30 or 3 in the afternoon. It really varies. We're still relatively new. So some days we have 10 or 12 kids. Some days, I think today there's 4 out there now doing lessons. And so they usually do like an hour and a half, 2-hour activity, lesson, art project, things like that. And then we usually leave an hour-ish for lunch. We have a big open kitchen in the basement of our building. And so they'll go down there. It has a bar facing the kitchen that has 10 stools with it. So they usually sit up there. Or, frankly, they sit on the counter and make their own lunches together. They often will end up baking sometimes down there during lunch, making pizza. They've been doing sourdough starters lately. They made sourdough Pop-Tarts or something last week. But they'll hang out there. We have a piano down there, play outside for a little bit. It's just really a lot of free time, and then try to kind of round them back up after lunch to do another kind of learning activity session, things like that. The theme this week was kind of a basketball March Madness theme. They did a project on creating a logo for their basketball team and designing t-shirts, and they did some sort of poetry bracket situation. So it's just really hands-on, and it seems to kind of, we're feeling our way through this with the families that we have and what kind of model is going to work. It changes a little bit, but it seems like kind of a weekly theme the kids have enjoyed in focusing on one thing. And then through that, you get the language arts, the math, the core subjects. But it's not like, okay, sit down and do your math and learn fractions.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. You said that you were feeling your way through it. Kind of, what does that look like? What are most families searching for? What are the challenges that they're having? Why did they come to you?
Yeah. So A lot of the reason we did this is because we both worked, and I ended up working more after my son was born than we had really ever intended me to work. And so there wasn't a lot of options, especially pre-COVID, like micro schools didn't exist, hybrid schools didn't exist. So it was looking for a program that could help parents find a place for their kid to go during the day, that because I mean, whether it's working or, caring for aging parents or whatever, like parents often have something else they're doing besides homeschooling their child, especially in today's world. And so where can they take their kid that's more than like an hour? So like, there's lots of places, the science museums do an hour class once a week, or there's a co-op that meets for a couple hours once a week. And so we designed it to where it's more of like a maker space, community space where they can drop in and stay all day if it works for that family. Or, some of our younger ones will come for just like a 2-hour session 4 days a week because they don't have an attention span, or they still take afternoon naps, things like that. A lot of our parents will stay on site sometimes. So some sit over in the coffee shop next door and work, and then they get to come out and have lunch with their kid. Or, when it was really nice out this week, we had a couple parents, we have 2 acres. So a couple of them just pulled some chairs out and we're hanging out and talking out there. So it's really, which is the vibe that I wanted, like just very much a community that parents are welcome when they can be here and have the time and want to participate in some of the activities. And then they can just walk away and know their kids are having a good time. So maximizing that flexibility was really a big thing for us.
I love that. And you mentioned that you saw in your daughter that she was not approaching learning the same way that you wanted her to. Can you speak a little bit to that? And like, how did you figure out the best way to approach learning for her?
I mean, I'm honestly not sure I have. We're still working at it. I think everybody goes into homeschool. I don't know, because I'm a little skewed in that, like, I've known I wanted to homeschool forever. It wasn't either something like school wasn't working out for my child and suddenly I'm pulling them, or COVID or things like that. So like I kind of had in my head how it would work, and I had in my head how I thought it had worked for my sister. Like she's in Kansas City a few hours away. I was around it, but I wasn't like in the day and day. So, I picture her like going to her co-ops and they're having a great time, and then they're doing some lessons. And now that like I have my own children and we relate on that level, like I realize that that's not what it's like really for a lot of people, maybe some people. My daughter and I mean, she's very smart, but we've butted heads. Like she's just not going to sit down with me and do an activity. And frankly, like I don't have a lot of energy for planning an activity for one child, right? And so part of that is like we ended up having a huge gap between our kids. So she was an only child until she was 7. So it's, it was a struggle to like do a whole lesson plan and curriculum and do the stuff for like one kid that may or may not engage with it, and so we just didn't end up doing it. And I would always be unschooling. I mean, I will say like the reading was a bit of a struggle. Like I just expected her to read, and obviously some kids do. And she was very verbal, and she just expressed no interest, didn't want to try. And so like we just really backed off for a couple of years, because again, I'm one of those that would rather her read at 14 and love reading than to push her to read when she's not ready. And I was afraid if we kept pushing her, she would just kind of be obstinate and not do it. So eventually we got her in with a reading tutor, and it only took a few months of just somebody working that's not one of us, one-on-one with her.
What did she like about it?
About the tutor?
Yeah.
I had no idea. I mean, she was the sweetest woman. She was a neighbor of ours that I had grown up with, actually. And she just jives with her. And just like, she was a very kind heart, and she had a dog. My daughter's always wanted a dog. And so I think we went like once a week for maybe a semester or something like that. And she just picked it up. She still doesn't love to read like I wish she would, but she also probably listens to podcasts and books. Anytime we're not here, she has headphones on and she's listening to something.
That's
and
so
she's
cool.
listened to podcasts since she was 3 or 4. We started her listening to Wow in the World, which is a science podcast.
What kind of podcast does she listen to now?
She listens to like Circle Round, which is I think fables. She was into ancient Egypt for a while, so she was listening to some of those. My brother has her listening to one that Nobody's Smarter Than a Fish or something. It's like a British podcast. I think it's Random Facts or something like that. So yeah, she listens to all sorts of things, and then books on tape. She got into Harry Potter for a little bit. They're really into the Wicked movie now, so things related to that. But I mean, in my ideal world, she would sit down and actually hold a physical book and read it. But I figure at least she's getting the information one way, and she just knows so much. So I guess it's the trade-off, right? Like we're letting go of maybe the things that we were raised with, or the way things we did, and how the world's going to be. I mean, I also am an avid podcast person and always have something on in the background, so I get it.
No, me as well. And this actually, told myself that I was going to foster more silence in my life. So I haven't been listening to as many podcasts. And it's interesting because
Yeah.
silence is also very, very useful. But I love learning. And the
Yeah.
fact that you can learn so much so quickly is just so incredible. And then share with different people and connect all these dots. And if she's listening to ancient Egypt and then fables and all of these things that she gets to then put together, it's also cool that she gets to direct that part of her learning. So I mean, a lot of traditional schools, they make it seem like school and learning only happens at school, right?
Mhm.
Does she bring learning into every aspect of her life?
I think there's really just no division in our life. So we plan on running the program through the summer too, because my work doesn't stop for the summer. It's just really interesting that our society is so set up around the school year until you're 18, and then it changes, and then you have kids and you're back on the semester schedule.
Isn't
And
it so
like,
funny? And then
I
everybody's like, I
know.
wish I could have spring break again. You're
Yeah.
like,
I know, but like so much, like you look at like travel and like tourism and the prices of things, like it's just fascinating. And
so
to me, like,
fascinating.
yeah, and I guess we are the same way with our work though, too. Like I have always prioritized flexibility in my work environment. And so I would rather kind of work all the time and not have to sit in an office from like 9 to 5 with no flexibility. Like it just, we do it all together as a family. So like, you know, we run this business. My husband and I have another business that we do as well. But like, she's just a part of all of that. She was a part of renovating this building. And so I think of school and learning like as the same way. Like, that's all part of life. That's how our life always were historically. Like you learn what you need to learn to do what you need to do to survive or to get better or what interests you. And so, like, it just kind of, and that's one of the things we talk about at Lily Lake is like doing life together. Like if a parent has a flexible job, they can come here and they can talk to the kids about what they're doing, and just giving them that insight. My daughter was a part of like sitting in when we went to the attorney's office or how to incorporate, how to get the business paperwork set up, how to get the loans, like things like that. We just like walked her through all of those processes, whether she remembers it in 20 years, if she wants to do her own business, like I doubt it, but that goes somewhere in your brain. And you're kind of like, oh yeah, these are things that happen when you run a business. So we really don't do learning and life as two separate things. Like it's just all together.
Yeah, you mentioned the challenge of reading. Has your son run into any challenges yet? I mean, that's probably the most difficult part about homeschooling. You might have a community around you, which is really important, but every single challenge that you encounter with your kid, there's not a teacher that you're outsourcing it to. You're doing it, and you have to be the
Mm-hmm.
one that cares about it as well. Have you encountered any of that with your son?
No, I mean, yeah, he's 4 and a half. So he's just like, he knows his letters and sounds again, just by picking him up. Like we don't sit him down and do anything. As part of being a network founder, we were able to get a phonics curriculum from Phillips Fundamental Learning Center, which is a school here in town that does a lot with dyslexia and dysgraphia and things like that. I took a training from them just because I also saw that need in the homeschool community for
Ah,
support. I have yet to try it with a child. I've tried to get a couple to sit down with me, but it's really hard when all the kids are running around here having a good time. But really thinking about how we can support homeschooling families in that, because that was probably the most intimidating thing for me is like, I don't know how to teach reading. Like, I don't remember what a long A is versus, or a short vowel. Or then, I mean, even in this training, I was the only like non-teacher in this training. And I was like, I do not remember any of this from school, like the terminology that they used and like putting the pieces together. So it was really kind of interesting, but like being able to provide some of that like really basic support for the families, whether it's like me, like I am by far not an expert on this, but being able to just walk the younger ones through this curriculum. And then I've actually been messaging with the woman who tutored my daughter about what kind of services she might be able to provide, and really just finding those supports where parents might not feel as equipped. But I really want to empower the parents, because I think a lot of times we take that away in our society. Like the parents just don't have the confidence in their ability to parent. And like, you can do this. We've done this forever. Whether or not you have, a college degree or didn't even get your high school diploma, like the information is available to all of us. And like, you can figure it out and you know your child better than anybody else. So like take the initiative, be confident in doing it. And so how do we kind of reinforce that message with them?
Yeah, speak to that. Their biggest fear is, I don't know if I'm enough to teach my kids.
Yeah. I mean, it just makes me sad because like, I don't know, you walk home with a newborn baby and like, I mean, I remember when my daughter was born, I was like, oh my God, like, how do I just have a baby now? And like, I'm expected to know what to do. And, you know, and so like, but then all of a sudden, like, they get to kindergarten at 5 and you're like supposed to hand them over to somebody else for 8 hours a day. And that's just so like bizarre to me. And this idea that we need books or experts or everything to like tell us how to do the job. Like there's coaching to decide on what kind of career you want. And there's, you know, organizing coaching. And there's like, it's just, there's so many people looking for external, I guess, guidance when like I think we don't give ourselves enough credit for like being able to figure out things on our own or do it on our own. And I think that's taught, you know, like you listen to policy and it's like, you know, we need to get the kids into schools earlier and, you know, we need to provide daycare for families. Like it's all about how society takes that place, whether it, you know, is the nonprofits or government or things like that. And like, not like, how do we support families to raise kids the way they want to? And they feel is best.
Interesting question. Are you ever afraid of messing your kids up? Because it's so much easier. What is the fear? The fear is that, you know, if your kid ends up in any way, shape, or form not great, like you outsource that. It's somebody else's fault. Like somebody else was involved in that. But if, for example, you're a homeschool parent or an alternative education parent where you are directing 95% plus of their learning and just their life, like nobody's going to look at a school. Nobody's going to look at the social groups they were part of. Everybody's going to look at you.
Yes. I mean, I am a little, but no more nervous or scared than I would be if I sent them to school. Because like there's plenty of people that go through public, private school that turn out quote unquote terrible or whatever, struggles in life, you know, and there's right, like it happens to everybody. I mean, I also like just watching my own kids of how much of their personality is like ingrained in them when they're born is kind of fascinating, you know. And I also look at like, obviously, like my husband and I have been very lucky. Like we've worked very hard, but like we have family support and we, you know, have education and flexible schedule and all those things that help a family raise a kid, you know, to adulthood and those advantages. No, I'm not, just because I keep reminding myself of the alternative. And I just don't have that much faith in it. Like, right? Honestly, like from what I've seen with my kids so far, they probably would go to public school and be fine. Like I went to public school. I mean, we all did, my siblings and I, and we all have turned out to be successful human beings. My cousins were actually homeschooled in the 70s. So I've literally been around it all my life and nobody homeschooled really in the 70s. It was just such a smaller percentage. And I just feel like a lot of it is so much else, right? Like if the parents involved in the public school and being active and things like that.
Why did it appeal to you so much?
It just really made sense. I mean, but I guess it made sense for different reasons, maybe over time. Like I didn't particularly like school. I easily found it like gameable. Like I just did what I needed to do to get the grade. Like even all through college and graduate programs, like it was just checking boxes. It was never like, oh, I'm really interested in this. And then like I bounced around on majors and like I've still never used any of my degrees in an actual job. And so like that part made sense to me. And then as things have changed and we've gotten more divisive in our society, like there's a lot of that of being like unsure of the messaging my child's getting, right? Like I just really want them to think critically, whether it's they end up believing the things I believe or not. I want them to feel confident in making those decisions, like in terms of politics, religion, things like that. I am a big believer in like your body feels things. And so like the idea of my daughter ever doing like a mass shooting drill. I mean, I haven't been in a school in a very long time, but you know, the things you hear in like walking through metal detectors and the doors being locked all the time. Like, I just think people feel that in their soul. And like, that's not a healthy way to be. Like if I had to walk through a metal detector every morning to get into my school and like have an active shooter drill once a year, like we had tornado drills, like that's just an insane thing to me that we're doing with our kids.
True. Tornado drills used to scare the heck out of me too.
They were terrifying, you know, and like the possibility of it happening was so small. But I don't know, just the idea of a child being aware that a mass shooting is a possibility. I mean, right, there's a time and a place and an age where that conversation happens, but like not at 5 or 6. Like, that's just, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the answer is, right? Like, I'm not saying one way or another, there's a good way to handle that situation, because obviously it's a reality that schools are living with, but I choose to remove my children from it.
Yeah, and you have that right. Okay, so one other question, and then I'll hit you with a couple of rapid fire questions. So,
Okay.
what did you see when your sister was homeschooling her kids that you just loved or that you liked? Because you mentioned that like she took her kids to co-ops and did all these
Mhm.
things that are kind of difficult. Why are they kind of difficult? And then what did you like about her approach that also made you just say, okay, this is it?
I mean, one thing that has really helped me, and I try to assure other parents, is like I've seen her children from birth to now, 4 of them are out of the house. And
And everybody always
yes.
wonders, like, is my kid going to be okay?
Right. And so to see unschoolers, I mean, like one ended up with a master's from Johns Hopkins, one's in the military. One of her daughters has joined the Carpenters Union, and one's like managing Chipotle. So they've all chosen very different paths. And so that's just been like, and like, I felt like it was questionable at times, like when they were in high school, I'm like, oh, maybe she should be doing more with them or dragging them to school or whatever. And I'm like, okay. So like I've seen them come from being like teenagers that never leave their room or whatever weird things teenagers do to like growing into adults and all being successful and seemingly happy in what their chosen career path is. And not just this idea that like you go to high school, you go to college, you check the boxes. Like it's very much allowed them to explore and see what might be interesting. A lot of it's just time with your kids. Like, again, they're only young so long. And to think of like them being gone 8 hours a day, and then you put in even just 1 or 2 extracurriculars, and that's 2 evenings a week and your weekend. And so you get like an hour or two. It's just like slowing life down a little bit, and like that we can set our own schedule. And, we purposely like don't have our kids in a lot of activities. It is different than the way I grew up. Like I grew up doing sports and debate and all of these other things, but really focusing on like that quality time together and slowing down and de-stressing kind of, and that anxiety. So I think that was a big thing I saw with my sister, and they just had really open relationships all the time, which I thought was really cool. And the same thing, like they were just part of each other's life. Their friends were there, like she's friends with their parents. And now that like, I mean, she's been doing this, she's done her co-op for 20 plus years in Kansas City and is on the board there. But like you see them all now have become adults. And I was up there last month, and one of my niece's friends now has children like the same age as my son. So like, which my niece is 30, so she could easily have, a 4-year-old. But it's just really funny because I'm like, oh my God, that was like Amber's best friend. And I've known her since she's 10. And now she's like, teaches dyslexia and has her own kids. And like, it's just like that community aspect from very young to old. Like they share all those experiences of parents dying and, tragedies and celebrations and births and all of that. Like it's just a really tight knit group of people. And it's not just here's your kids' friends at school and you see them at the sporting events. It's really a strong community.
Yeah, that's a cool way to put it. And I really like the point that you made about just like picking what it is that you want your life to look like. I don't,
Mm-hmm.
it's so cool that this is, how we get to live today. But in the past, there were so many constraints, like constraints around work, constraints around life, constraints around what you were going to do. And now, really, the main constraint is actually just school. Like so many families, so many parents have remote work.
Yeah.
Okay. You can be anywhere, you can, do it in your own time, kind of. Obviously, that's not like easy to do. But
Right.
for example, like so many families have remote work. Okay, awesome. School tells you when to be in school, how long to be in school, where you need to be, how you need to do it. And like
Mm-hmm.
it's so cool to me that instead of choosing the school first, like families can now ask the question, what do we want our family to look like? And then based on that, then choose the method of schooling. So like, okay, do we want our family to be together often? Okay, does that mean that we are homeschooling? Does that mean that we are putting them in less activities? Does like it's a problem to
Mm-hmm.
solve, but you start with the question of like, what do I want my family to look like? Instead of just accepting the common answer, which is it's going to look exactly how it's looked for years. Like we're just going to take what other people do, and this is going to be where we're going to start. This is going to be what we assume needs to be the case. And instead, it's like you get to choose, and that's so cool.
Yeah. And it's like raising kids isn't just about raising a productive worker, like I want them to know that they're more than that. Like their childhood is not about preparing them to enter the workforce, like that. Yes, that's a part of it. We all have to, contribute to society and be able to support ourselves and our family, but that may look different for people in very many ways. And so like just from a very early age, letting them know that they have that control is just a really important thing, and they're not required to fit in to whatever society says, like, this is the way you have to be.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so rapid fire questions. Question number 1, when you look at your kids' education, what is one resource or thing, or like either, I don't know if it's a book or a podcast, but something that you look at and you say, I would highly recommend this to other people?
More than anything is finding a community, people who are similar to you in this aspect, that are prioritizing the things you're prioritizing, and having that support network, because that's so important.
How would you recommend finding that too, as a side?
I mean, I've struggled. I started my own. So, I mean, there's lots of Facebook groups out. I mean, one of the things we really emphasize here is like the in-person, like show up, be here. There's lots of online things, which can be great. But, I think we learned from COVID how much we need that in-person connection and just touching other human beings and being in their presence. I think finding like most of our stuff and where we are is on Facebook. I never used Facebook until my daughter got to school age. And I was like, oh God, I have to figure this out, because this is where all the homeschool stuff is. We are also trying to facilitate that a little bit by having the toddler play cafe. And so we have had a lot of people with 1, 2, 3-year-olds that are like, oh, can we see the homeschool space? What do you offer for younger kids? We're really interested in homeschooling. How does it look? And so one of the goals here is to let them see how it looks for all of our different families with school age, and they can start building that relationship and community at like very young ages. Whereas my experience was all of my friends sent their kids to school. And so that was one of the things we were really looking at. I think community is hard right now, though. I think everybody's struggling with it.
Second question, what is a trend you see in just the homeschool movement, the alternative education movement?
I think a lot of the hybrid models are really cool, just because it gives the families the flexibility and gives a lot of the control back to the family, but still provides them with some support. And then just seeing a lot of people opting out of traditional education, like people that never would have considered it, I think is really cool.
I like that. Last question, what is something that you're super excited by in this upcoming year? Some of our listeners are from Kansas, and I was doing some research on Facebook and stuff, and Lily looks so cool. Like, if I was a kid, I would just want to be there all the time. So what is something that you're excited about that y'all are doing, and how can people get involved?
So I think one of the things that really distinguishes us, and now that it's spring, like we're seeing it more, is like we have 2 acres. So we're just getting ready to submit a grant for like a nature Montessori type play space, part of our 2 acres. So fingers crossed on that. We did get a cat, but we're looking at getting some goats and some other farm animals. So a lot of the kids are really, I've seen a lot of like some people looking for farm schools or the nature-based schools or things like that, really expanding on the outdoor area that we have. I mean, we are in the country surrounded by farmland. So it's just got that really like vibe to it. And so like the goats, I am super excited about. And then just, continuing to see what our families need. Like I put this together based on what I thought I wanted to see. And so we're kind of in the process of reevaluating that. How has it worked in the last 4 months? Do we switch up the model for summer? Do we switch it up for next school year? What are some things we can add? I mean, one of the things is like we originally, and still are technically, like we're opening 9 to 5 with the idea that like, again, providing supports for working parents. We don't ever have people stay past 3 really. So like that was interesting, because to me, I thought for sure working parents would take advantage of that, but it just doesn't seem like that's really the need right now. And so looking at maybe instead of doing like classes or something like that, we're going to do like some open play time. I don't know if you've heard of that, Let Grow, Peter Gray. Yeah. So I need to go back and look this stuff, but I've had conversations and listened to some of their things on like the Let Grow Play Club, where it's just, we open up our space to let kids be I don't want to say totally unsupervised, but really have the freedom to play uninterrupted, and like that it doesn't have to be team sports and like all organized, that they can just, so that also really excites me. Yesterday was a great day. Like we had a bunch of new people and the weather was beautiful and the kids are inside and outside, and parents are meeting each other and talking to each other. We had one of the Play Cafe parents giving another parent that had never been here a tour of the homeschool space. And so just like that, it just warms my heart to see when all of these families connect, because people are craving it. And raising kids is so hard. I do feel like we have so many advantages, us as a family, and it still is exhausting every single day. And that's kind of where my passion is, providing that support to our families and really building that community that's not just us providing to them, it's them building what they want to see in a space for everybody.
Dang. And where can people find you if they want to?
Our website's lilylakekansas.com. We have Facebook and Instagram. I don't have Instagram, so I don't even know what it is. But I think it's pretty easy to find, and all of our contact information's there. We're about 10 minutes outside of Wichita, so it's a really easy drive out here. We have parents that come from as far as an hour away, a lot of the rural communities around here, which is really cool. People are welcome to come visit, try a day, hang out on the property, and see if they like it.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This was really fun. And also, yeah, if I were in Kansas, I would be there all the time because it seems so cool.
Well, next time you're here, we definitely want you to come by and see it.
I definitely want to. And you said that your daughter can make a mean latte, right?
She can, yes. It's impressive.
Well, I will have to try that out.